Hi friends, I am so excited about today's video because we have the very special opportunity to sit down with the brilliant Paula Lafferty, author of The Once and Future Queen, which, as you know, is one of my favorite books of 2025. This book has been getting a lot of buzz. In fact, Kirkus named it one of the best indie books of 2025. So it's been generating a lot of buzz, not just with me. A lot of people love this book. And we want to spend a little time talking with Paula about the book, her writing process, her inspiration for this book, what characters she loves most or maybe least, and then what we can expect for the rest of this series going forward. Because as we know, this is just the first book in a brand new Romantasy series. If you love epic fantasy with like a strong female lead and tension and banter and fun, you are going to love this conversation. So I hope you stick around and enjoy our interview with Miss Paula Lafferty. Good morning. We're here
Hello.
with Paula Lafferty, author of um, The Once and Future Queen. So I love this book. One of my favorite books of 2025. I loved it. I talked my book club into reading it. So
I
we're
love that
all
so much.
reading it in April. And one of the girls has already started it. And she's like, oh, Jenna, I love it. You're right.
That's
So,
amazing.
first of all, thank you for being here and thank you for sharing your gifts because it was phenomenal. Um, Tell me a little bit about the story in case there's someone who hasn't read it yet. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, so the Once and Future Queen, like sort of the quick pitch, it's that it's about Vera who's living her ordinary present day life when she finds out that she is actually from the 7th century and she's the legendary Queen Guinevere. So naturally this takes us on a journey of time travel, going back to the 7th century, slow burn romance, some adventure, some magic, and it is the start of a trilogy. I try to say that up top now because I know there are a lot of people who get to like the last 100 pages and they're like, wait a second, how how are we going to wrap all of this up? We're not. There's two more.
well, hey, I'm there for it because it was so much fun.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
Talking about her going back to the seventh century, I did a little reel about this because she took a picture of her family, I think
Hmm.
some socks and underwear, and then some new running shoes she had just gotten. And I was thinking, when you want maybe like a flashlight, some lip gloss, deodorant, like I could think of other things. Um, so what was her mindset in that moment? Because it seemed like we got into the action really quick. There
Yeah.
was.
Interestingly, in earlier editions, earlier drafts of this book, there was more of a lead in. And so you do see a little bit more of what Vera's doing before she heads back to the 7th century, but it just didn't like it didn't work the way I quite wanted it to. So this ended up with a little bit less. But I also appreciate the way that kind of emphasizes just what our brains do when we don't have time to process what's happening to us. So like Vera very much focuses in on what she sees around her. Like she sees the running shoes and is like, yeah. And she thinks of underwear because I don't know, like that's just what her brain goes to. She's like, they're not gonna have good underwear. And then of course there's the like you get there and you're like, maybe some Tylenol would have been a good idea. Maybe like some Band-Aids, maybe all of the other things come to mind. So I think it's just very much like a symptom of what does your brain do when you don't have enough time? And for me, when I was doing that, it was like, okay, I'm pretending I'm standing in my room. What am I thinking of right now? Like I have 60 seconds to think of what I would bring. And just like kind of counting the number of things, like, okay, I thought of like four different things. And so Vera got like four different things.
Fair. That's fair. That's fair. Um, I and this book has gotten a lot of buzz. Like I'm looking at my notes here that you were named one of the Kirkus Best Indie Books of 2025, an Indie Next Pick, and then you're on a bunch of bestseller lists. How has that been for you? Is because I believe this is your first book, is that right?
This is, yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's really gratifying. Yeah, writing a book is such a vulnerable thing. Making art is just inherently a vulnerable thing. And putting it into the world where it's vulnerable, just the act of creating, of like letting it outside of your body and onto some other, whether it's a canvas or paper or whatever it is, it's vulnerable. And then when you choose to like release it wide, that is another step. Like, you're letting the story not just be yours anymore. um so of course, like, and I don't know if you know this, I originally self-published this book. So it very much was me making the call of like, I'm going to let this exist in the world, I'm going to choose how this is existing in the world. And that was a very scary thing. And I think like one of the biggest things is, when releasing art, like, you got to decide how you're gonna deal with what's to come, because you let it become everybody else's. So it's like good, bad, ugly, in between. How do you like ground yourself in the work that you've done? And for me, that was just like, okay, when I'm building this story, when I'm editing, when I'm working on it, I want to leave no stone unturned. I want to be tireless in making sure I give this book, this story, everything I've got. And then no matter what anybody says about it, it doesn't matter, because I'll know I gave it everything. So I think like going into it knowing I gave this book everything I had, it really only the response to it, the fact that like it's made these lists and been well loved by a lot of people, it feels really good. But I'm also trying to like hold it loosely, the same way you'd hold negative criticism of like, it's just people's opinions. Stay grounded in the story. And I think I like my brain is very much there, because I just finished writing the second book and I'm editing it right now. So trying to stay very much in the like dedicated to the story place of my brain. Maybe that's an unsatisfying answer, but that's where I am.
No, absolutely. And speaking of your second book, do you have can you give me like two words or three? Like, I'm not picky, like describing
Hmm.
where we're going in the second book. Um,
Hmm. That's a lovely question, and also one that I'm like, my brain is doing the what would I grab in my room in 60 seconds panic. Okay. All right, let's see here. Let's see here. Two or three words of where we're going. Um, Deeper, darker, and so way more depth, way heavier. So those are just synonyms for the first two words that I said. And like expanded, I think would say. Those are all super vague, because I also don't want to like
oh,
muck it up for anybody who
absolutely.
hasn't read it. But everything gets more depth. The whole world gets way more expanded. And just because of the nature of it being a trilogy and this being the second book, like it, things are going to get harder. They got to get harder before they can get better. So that's
Well,
where
and
we
it's
are.
funny you say that about it getting darker because I found there were some intense scenes in the
Sure.
first book, but I did find it light and there were some charming scenes between both Guinevere and Lancelot and
Yeah.
Guinevere and Arthur that I just love, like the where he's teaching her the dance
Yes.
for that was one of my favorites. It was just so charming. I'm like, I'm loving this. It's and I have to ask because the inspiration obviously is Camelot and the Arthurian legend. Has that always been a favorite story of yours?
Yeah, which is interesting. Like, it has always been my favorite premise, but I was always looking for this book, and maybe that's something hardwired in like the story building part of my brain that was like, I know the story I want. I want to make it. But I was always looking for something that had the big adventure, more centered on Queen Guinevere, and a Queen Guinevere who is not based on like and we could go on a whole tangent about where the diatribes about Guinevere came from, which is really 15th century Thomas Malory writing it while he writing Le Morte d'Arthur, which solidified who Guinevere was going to be from prison while convicted for sexually assaulting a woman. That's who got to decide who Guinevere was. Anyway, that's my soapbox. Anyway, I always wanted that story with more adventure and more Guinevere, and then also that playfulness and whimsy that I think you were kind of referencing there.
Yes.
So I've always loved the idea of the story, and I've really enjoyed some of the more playful versions of it. I enjoy all of the versions, honestly. But, there's like, as a kid, there was this movie that came out in the early 90s called A Kid in King Arthur's Court. Have you seen it? Are you familiar?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I think it was a made-for-TV Disney movie, but like there's some heavy hitters in it. Kate Winslet and Daniel Craig are both in it, which is so funny. And it is a take on the Mark Twain Yankee in King Arthur's court. So there is this like thread of time travel and Arthurian legend. So there's just like I think one of my favorite things that I learned as I learned more about the legend after just loving the premise of it. Is that really, at its heart, everybody who's told a version of the Arthurian story, there's no canon, which is beautiful. You can really go where you want to go with it. And throughout all of the history of this story, everybody who tells it puts their time, their perspective, their understandings, their longings into the story so that it just gets to be a playground where we explore our own understandings of humanity and connection and meaning and purpose and all of those things. I think like the fact that you have this amazing little magical premise and world and characters that we can just dive into and live in has always been one of my favorite things about it.
I'm with you. It's always been one of my favorite stories too. And I have to say, I love because if you watch a lot of like even the movies for the most
Yeah.
part, it tends to because there's like a love triangle, right? In
For
most of this versions. And typically it's like the great love is really Guinevere and Lancelot, but
Yeah.
I was always a King Arthur fan. I'm like, you know, it's sort of like Batman and Superman. You might have a fling with Batman, but you take Superman home to mama.
Oh my God, I love that so much. That's hilarious.
So I feel like Lancelot, okay, you have a fling with him, but you take King Arthur home to mama, right? That's who you marry. So I
Yeah.
love that. I loved seeing him depicted more also. Like King Arthur
Yeah.
developed.
That is another thing. Like I do feel very strongly that Guinevere has, for a very long time, gotten the short end of the stick in the way that like we sort of latched onto this one version of her, and that's been her portrayal in most of media, be it film or books or whatever, even like modern feminist retellings. You've still got a really jealous Guinevere. But on the same token, like that she is depicted as very two-dimensional. Oftentimes Arthur is also, he's like this kind of larger than life figure who doesn't get to be a full human either. So I like getting to let everybody be a full human with their amazing pieces and of course their flaws as well. But yeah, I just like getting to dig in and um live with these characters in a new way and like very close up has been just so much fun.
And do you have a favorite character?
I I always cheat when I get asked this question because I think I give four. Uh,
Okay.
if I have to pick one, I'm gonna say Vera, Guinevere, um, because I've just like always wanted to tell her story, and getting to is the treat of my life. But then I also really love Arthur and Lancelot, and I really love Gawain, and all of the ways like so. Just here's the best way I can put it. I love Vera because it's her story, and again, always wanted to tell it. I love Arthur because he was such a difficult character to find in the writing. He was the one that I was like, I know I haven't gotten, like when I was plotting this before the words were on the page, it was like, I haven't found him, I haven't found him, I haven't found him. And then when I found him, it was like, oh my God, so exciting. And he's such a challenge to write because now you may or may not know this, but I have never been the king of a nation before. And trying to like put myself in that perspective is I don't know, leading a nation, leading a new burgeoning country was something that I just um can't hardly fathom. And so trying to step into that was a really was fun and was also very challenging. I love Lancelot because from the first scene he shows up, it was like he jumped onto the page. He was maybe the easiest character to write. And then Gawain was the most surprising because he, in the plotting of book one, and I'm kind of like a loose, like I plot a book out and I know where we're going and I know what's going to happen. And by the time I get maybe 2/3 of the way, everything is really like, I got it down. But I always leave a little wiggle room for just seeing how the story and the characters move. And Gawain, his role increased so much from the beginning of draft one to the end of it. And then with every subsequent draft, he just became a bigger and bigger character. Originally, he was just like this tiny little side character, and now he's all but a central character in the story. So that's my long version of my favorite characters.
Gawain was surprising to me. When he first came on the scene, I'm like, oh, he's kind of a
Okay.
little stick in the mud. I'm like, what's his deal? But then, oh my goodness, he grew on me so much. So I'm right there with you. I love your characters. Um, is there a character you feel like readers are misunderstanding?
Um, no, and I've been so pleased because there are some really complicated characters who are it's not black and white about who they are and how they feel and like Vera is not sure how she feels. And I've loved seeing people respond and also be like, I don't know how I feel about that. I'm like, yeah, good, good. Um, so no, I honestly I don't think I've gotten the feeling that anybody's really misunderstood. I think I'm really excited to kind of like open up the rest of the story in books two and three because there are a lot of characters that you don't really know that you're going to get to know.
Right.
And that is very fun to me.
Um, yeah, I would say not that I misunderstand, but I think Merlin is confusing to me
Really?
because
Sure.
I feel like I had a one impression of him at the beginning of the book, then I wasn't so sure, then I was really not sure.
That's amazing. That's
And then we're
perfect.
done, and
Yeah.
oh. So it
Yeah.
was
I
very
think
surprising, and I love that you've taken it to places that it is completely unexpected
thank you.
with this journey. Do you have a favorite scene in your book?
Mm. I definitely have some standouts. I don't know that I have one favorite. I love the dancing scene that you mentioned. Um, Gosh, a favorite. I love all of the moments when we have, so some of them are really heavy, but all of the moments when we have those like emotional breakthroughs, whether it's in the relationships or internally for the characters. Um, there's a scene with Vera and Lancelot in the Cove that I really love. This sort of like naming what we are, naming who we are. And then the dancing scene. And I also I really value, there's a very, very heavy scene that happens, and then it's followed by a lot of like, okay, all of the mess of our not communicating, all of the mess of our holding each other at arm's lengths. We're done with that. We need to like break through. And I love it when we get to be like, okay, we've built all of this tension has just been growing and growing and growing. Let's cut through it. So I love that like tipping point of tension. And I think there's a number of those, probably because I love it so much. That's why I put so many of those in. But every moment when we get to be right at the precipice of tension breaking, those are my favorites.
And I don't know if this was intentional, but I noticed that Vera and Arthur are reading The Hobbit,
Yeah.
The Hobbit, or There and Back Again. And when I finished the book, I stopped and I'm thinking about it. I'm like, it feels like a little foreshadowing in that they're on a journey, just like Bilbo was on a journey with
Mhm.
his, you know, group, and then they've got their group, Lancelot and Gawain and Matilda, even, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So was that intentional, or was it just The Hobbit's just maybe one of your favorite books, or both?
The Hobbit part, I don't I think it's a little bit of an interweaving thing. So part of that, one of my best friends in grade school and high school, her family would always read The Hobbit out loud together every Christmas. And I always thought that was just like so charming and lovely and such a sweet photo, like a little snapshot of a family. And so that was naturally like a part of Vera's story before I was even conscious. It was like, oh, I'm putting the Hauser family in here. But then it really, like, there is a lot of thematic significance there. And I do love that, like, I think most stories are this way, but I love the way The Hobbit, even in the title, There and Back Again, A Hobbit's Tale, names it, is that anytime we like endeavor, whether it's real life or in a book, endeavor on some great quest or endeavor on like really living fully, we're not going to come out of it the same. We're going to come out of it entirely changed. And whether we like go to the ends of the earth and come back again, like it's a new world. We live in a whole new existence every time we live fully in life. So there's definitely, I think, some thematic elements there that no matter where we're ending up, like it is that cyclical nature of you can end up right back in the same place you started. You can end up in a whole different place, but either way, like you are changed.
Love it. I love that. Um, uh, so since we're talking about this journey in The Hobbit, is if there was one emotional truth that
Mm.
you wanted your readers to take from this book, what would it be?
I think for book one, the big takeaway for me is in this journey of coming to understand self-worth, and that it doesn't come from anything external. It doesn't come from external approval. It doesn't come from doing something to make ourselves worthy, but that each of us inherently, as human beings walking the face of this planet, uh, you know, living, breathing, is worthy, like worthy of existence, worthy of love, worthy of opinion, worthy of like a just existence in this world. So yeah, that like truth of inherent self worth for each person.
I love it. That's great. Um, what do you think about this whole push towards fantasy, specifically female-centered romantasy? Um, what does that say about our culture right now, and why are people gravitating towards that so much?
I don't know that I can speak coherently and wisely to like the masses, but I can say the truth of it for myself. Um, I grew up on fantasy stories, and I mean, I'm thinking of books, but also of films. Like my favorite movies growing up was like Indiana Jones and Jurassic Park and Star Wars and The Mummy, like all of these. I mean, and they're all romantasy for the most part, um, at the heart of it. But really, like what drew me to those stories and Lord of the Rings as well, what draws me to those stories is that yeah, it's this escape. It is like a release and an adventure. It's something that's just like very fun and filling, but also it's that quote from Samwise Gamgee in The Lord of the Rings. It's that like there's this we look at these great stories because we get to see the people in them overcome the absolutely insurmountable, do the impossible thing. We get to see good win out. And I think for me, a lot of right now, when why I dip into fantasy is because I want to see that. I want to see hope being alive, and I want to see characters who feel real and feel like best friends to me, overcoming things that don't seem possible, and good winning out. Like it is for me a parallel of what I'm looking for in myself and in the world, and trying to find that hope like internally, to believe in a good outcome, to believe that like we can keep fighting and that good can ultimately overcome. And I think that like the female-led romantasy piece, for one thing, on the romance side of it, I love so much this wider acceptance of not just romance, but also of like sex and sexuality in books. I think a lot of people, I don't think it, I know a lot of people have grown up in some purity culture that's done a lot of damage, and the fact that we can explore sexuality on the page, nobody's harmed. Like it can be this cathartic experience. Nobody's body is on the line. Nobody's personal story is on the line. It's just like pure catharsis and exploration. Like the fact that that has become so much more readily accepted is, I think, something that's really cool and really beautiful. And yeah, I think a lot of women are readers, and we like to see ourselves in stories. And so getting to like picture ourselves at the helm in all of these different ways of what it means to be, and who a person can be, is really splendid.
I love it. Yes, I agree. Um, so I want to pivot a little bit to your writing process. You alluded to it a little bit that you're kind of like a plotter.
Hmm.
So are you linear in how you set up your story, or what is your process when you came to this book?
Well, it's incredibly chaotic. So for me, a story always starts with just kind of a premise. So this one in particular, the idea actually was birthed in 2009, when I was helping to lead literary themed tours through England and Scotland. And it happened to take us to Glastonbury, and I was like, what's in Glastonbury? And the tour guide was like, there's this really cool hill called the Tor. So really that experience of just rolling into town and seeing the Tor and being like, oh my God, feeling the magnetic pull to it. So experiencing this magical place, and then sitting in the ruins of the Abbey, and I'd learned about it like being known as the Isle of Avalon, and there's this grave marker for King Arthur and Queen Guinevere there. So all of this is swirling, and I was just sitting in the ruins, and the like premise for, what if this girl grew up here and she didn't know that she was Queen Guinevere, and she works at the George and Pilgrim's Hotel, and then she finds out and she goes back in time. So that just fell in my brain. And so after the premise, then there are like random scenes that will come to mind. Like there's a scene where Vera sees what she thinks is like a ghost on top of the Tor, which turns out to not be a ghost at all, and has a payoff later in the story. Like that was one of the first scenes that came to mind. So they're like scenes that don't come in order, that just kind of like will show up like magic. So for me, the process then begins, which is writing down everything I know about the story, everything that has like come to mind, and just letting it exist. Now, obviously, like this was not a great process because it started in 2009, and then it like took a 13-year break. But now I have a process. So I write down all of the things that come to mind, and just like a chaos note on my phone. That way I have it, whether I'm on my computer, whether I'm here, there, anywhere. And then like kind of just daydream in the world of the story, and let different scenes show up and play, and like imagine different things. And I don't know, it's very woo woo, but I feel very much a sense of knowing when I happen to stumble on a scene that belongs, of like, oh yes, okay, that goes, and that goes in the chaos note. And so then after the kind of chaos daydreaming segment, then it's sitting down and actually wondering the what ifs of it all. Okay, what if this happens? What if this character is this way? And again, that woo woo thing of being like, oh, that's it, that's it, that's it. And then the chaos note starts to take on more structure as I fill in the blanks of like, okay, we're starting here, and then we're going here, and then builds out from there. And mostly, and like I'll get the full picture of it before I start writing, but I don't have all of the pieces filled in. There'll still be moments of like, okay, well, uh, we're in this building and we need to get to this place over here, and these characters need to get to this conflict right here.
Mhm.
And how do we get from here to here? And that's, I think, when some of the magic of like the actual writing process happens, where characters will get creative, or because of the boundaries in place. I was telling a friend about it the other day, like, and this feels a little bit grandiose and dramatic to compare it to this, but it's the best comparison I have. So it's kind of like in the Apollo 13, both the true story and in the film, that like, okay, you're on a spaceship and you have a problem that has occurred, and these are the supplies that you have around you. How do you solve this problem? And I feel it very much the same way when in the writing process. It's like, okay, I'm right here. We're in this situation. These characters are present. These supplies are present. This magic is available. How do we get from here to here? How do we solve that problem with the supplies we have? And I think sometimes like having those limits and boundaries in place is where some of the coolest story and character pieces come out. And that to me is the part that feels really magic. But that's my writing process.
I love
But
that.
I write in order. I do write linear.
I'd never thought of that. Like what you said about having boundaries and constraints so that it limits it. Um, that's really, really insightful. When you're writing and you're putting together the story, do you have any tools that you use? I mean, you mentioned your note on your phone. Is there anything else that you use?
Um, Not really. Like I, if but there is a lot of research, obviously, that goes into writing anything historic. Now, granted, this is historic fantasy, so I do have the wiggle room of like magic changes some things.
Right.
But even then, I think it's so important to defining the limits of the magic, because magic can't fix everything. That's a boring story. So figuring out the limits of the magic system, but that also requires knowing what the limits of the historic fact are. So there is a good bit of research, and most of that goes in the chaos note. But I do every now and then, like in writing book one, I went down this major rabbit hole about, okay, what when Vera got to Camelot, and I'm describing the chamber and what's going on there. I was like, okay, what's the toilet like? What's the toilet situation in the Camelot castle? And so like 3 hours, 3+ hours of research and a Pinterest board and like laying it out and all of these pictures of what privies looked like in castles, only to decide that that was irrelevant for the nature of book one. I didn't even need to mention it. But I know what the toilets look like in the castle, and like I suppose that's important that I know how that functions. But yeah, so I guess there are a couple of Pinterest boards, and in editing, I'll make like a post-it story wall, but I don't use that for building the story or for writing. Sometimes a notebook, because like if I get stuck typing, writing longhand will sometimes just get me out of my head. But yeah, a notebook and maybe a Pinterest board or two, but that's pretty much it.
Oh,
And
good.
some music.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Do you have any rituals? What kind of music?
So for me with writing, like I'll have a playlist when I'm daydreaming. Lyrics are great. And if I stumble on a song, sometimes the song will be the impetus for finding the scene, which is so cool. And I just like, one day actually, so this book was originally just going to be one book. And I was standing doing laundry, like folding towels one day and listening to a song, and it's still on my playlist, my book playlist. And a scene that occurred after the events of the novel fell in my brain like magic, and was very clear, like, oh my God, of course that can't be the ending. That was a terrible ending. Like, there has to be more. So that's how the book became 2 books, and then eventually it also became 3. I digress. So rituals, I don't necessarily have any rituals, partly because I just like I just have to get myself to write. And if there are too many pieces to it, then I'll fall off. So I try to make a practice of like writing as many places as I can under as many circumstances as I can, just to like show myself, no, it's okay. You can do this. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in your office or you're at a coffee shop or you're on an airplane. Like, just do what you can. But I do like, I don't always listen to music, but if I'm writing and listening to music, it's not music with lyrics. So I'll listen to like a Game of Thrones ambiance music. That's a heavy one that I've used a lot. And then the other thing, so it's pretty much Game of Thrones or nothing, except for recently I have been listening to like some cathedral choir music because
Oh,
it's either in Latin, which I cannot understand, or it's slow enough that the words don't become a distraction, and just the sound of really like beautiful voices I found very satisfying. So
I love it.
Game of
I
Thrones
have
or
to
choirs.
ask, when you were folding laundry and the song, what song was it?
Um, it was. I'm not gonna say. I'll say after book two.
Oh, okay. Okay, because it'll give it away. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I don't
Oh,
think it'll give it away, but we'll just hold on that.
we'll hold on to that. Which
But
means
I've
you'll
never
have
been
to
out.
come back and we'll have to talk again after book two.
Right. We will.
Um, what's been the most challenging part of writing this book? And then also, what's been the most satisfying, has brought you the most joy?
I don't know that I can make a distinction because part of what has been so satisfying has been the like put keeping going because it was hard. So I have always wanted to write books, adventure books, just like this one. I have always wanted to write a book just like this one, ever since I was a little kid. And I started and gave up on so many stories. To the point that like I had decided by the time I was an adult, like this dream of writing a book is not for me. I've moved on from it. My chance is gone. I'm not going to do it. And then when the kind of the urge is an understatement. The need to be writing came back. That was such a gift. And then actually sitting down and writing chapter one was such a gift. And then keeping going was the greatest gift of all. Of the like showing myself, no, you can do this thing. This is not the end of the story. This is the beginning of the story of writing. And every time I would finish a chapter, so I guess I did have some rituals, but it's more of like a after ritual.
Mm.
Every time I finished writing a chapter to sort of like get myself to keep going, I would record myself reading it out loud because that helped me with the editing. And I would also send it to like a very small group of very trusted people. And they would be like, oh my God, keep going. We're so into the story, which was so helpful. So I did that. And I also would print out the draft one because I knew I wanted to edit longhand after I was done. So I was like, okay, every chapter to keep myself from just like editing ad nauseum, I'll print it out. And I also filmed myself like flopping down each chapter, and like over the course of 9 months when I wrote the story, the pile got bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was so satisfying to see this thing, to be able to see this thing happening that I'd never been able to do before, that I'd never been able to push through, and like realizing like I have learned this muscle of persistence. I am exercising this muscle of persistence. Just it was so satisfying and so joyful to do the thing that I had always wanted to do that I thought was too hard to do. So like I guess they're one and the same.
Yeah. Well, and so many people do give up on that dream, like you said, when you become an adult. So I love that because you're inspirational in that, it's never too late to
Nope.
pursue that dream. Um, so why did you choose to go the indie route with your book?
I initially, like when I was writing the book, I was dead set on only pursuing traditional publishing. Um, Not because of a stigma thing. Like I know there is still like a stigma. And sometimes right, sometimes wrong, because the truth is like in self-publishing, everybody can publish a book, and there's no guarantee that the author has done lots of editing. There's no guarantee that a lot of work has been poured into it. So on the one hand, I understand it, but on the other hand, I was like, okay, that puts you downhill with a fight. So there was that aspect, but it was more the aspect of like I have no idea how to do any of the self-publishing things. I have no idea how to find an editor, how to find a cover designer. I have no idea how to find an audience, how to market it, how to set everything up. And after I finished this book, and then I posted that video of me flopping down all the chapters, and it went really viral. And then all of a sudden, I went from having like a couple people interested in this book to having like 20,000 people interested in my story in this book, which was so incredible and humbling and such a gift. But it also really started opening my mind up to what this could look like going at the self-publishing route, because it wasn't just me anymore. There was like a community of people who were excited. And in that time, I also kind of was like getting this crash course on what traditional publishing is like, and also on what self-publishing is. So all of these things that I was like, I can't do it because I don't know how to do this, and this. I was learning how to do all of these things, and then also learning like I'm positioned. I have this opportunity to get to do self-publishing in a unique way, and to be a voice for the validity of self-publishing and the fact that there are so many amazing books out there that are self-published, and kind of get to join in with that. So it was a process. And I was also never opposed to traditional publishing, but once I self-published, I was like, there are all of these pieces for me that are so important: the artistic integrity and autonomy, getting to have like some say in shaping how the book looks and how it is, and also in like honoring readers and all of those things. So when my now editor from Kensington, the imprint is Erewhon, but the larger press is Kensington, contacted me. It was from an Instagram video that she saw about my book. She was like, we're not asking you to push your self-publishing date, because it was shortly before I self-published, like a month before. She's like, we're not asking you to move your publishing date. We want to come alongside you. We are great with you retaining these rights, which I retained my audio rights. I retained my foreign rights because I had been doing those on my own. And my audio with Julia Whalen's amazing company, Audiobrary. So anyway, like the fact that there are some really amazing publishers out there who are willing to like come alongside authors, and have seen the way that self-publishing is shifting the industry and like inviting artists into that, has been super cool. That was a longer answer than you were looking for. Sorry, kind of tangent.
No, I love that. So what's been most surprising then about the indie author experience? Because you said you originally wanted to go traditional, and are there some misconceptions that maybe you had, or that you are still out there about indie publishing? And I will have to show this again, because your book is absolutely
Oh my God, thank you so much.
beautiful. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, and I'm also really like, just to say, so Kensington is one of the oldest and largest independent presses in existence. So they are not a part of the big five at all. So the fact that I got to be self-published, independently published, and then to go to this incredible independent press and still retain some of that sense of like the like focus on the smaller artists and a little bit more of an intimate thing, it's just very cool. I think I'm not sure, misconceptions. I think there's an interesting thing of like, people will assume, some people, not everybody. I think there's a good shift that's been going on, but some people will assume if they find out a book is self-published that it didn't have the professional editing processes and didn't have the professional cover designing processes, which that can be the case, but that is not at all the case. Like, I ended up hiring the editor that I worked with has worked with a number of, traditional publishers, and then you just independently contract. So, but it is so hard. Self-publishing was amazing and gratifying, and some people are built for it. Like, some people are so good at doing it, and they can write incredible books and do all of the publishing pieces and keep going for their whole career. It was sort of like draining me of all my creative energy. I don't think I'm wired for like doing both the business, all of the business part and the writing part. So I'm very grateful to not be doing that, all of it anymore. But it is, it's just a lot. It's a lot, especially if you're like, I don't want to leave any stone unturned. It is a lot.
Yes, yeah. I can see that. There are a lot of moving pieces. I mean, just with the marketing and so it sounds like with Kensington, you still maintain most of the control in terms of like decisions around the look and feel. And you said your rights for like the audio and international publishing. I didn't realize you could, that was a thing. I mean, that's awesome that you get to keep that instead of someone else keeps it, like one of the big companies, and you just get
Yeah.
like a fraction of that.
So it didn't used to be, and like it didn't used to be an option. I know there are now like big five publishing deals, and I don't want to like call anybody out because I don't know if they want this, if they want it publicly mentioned, but there have been authors who started out independently published, and because their books were so successful, they had all of this bargaining power in their publishing deals. So they retained like ebook rights with big five publishers, which previous to the like recent self-publishing boom, unheard of, like did not happen. So it's very cool to see that. And I also like, I want to say like Kensington has been amazing. And, we just were having some cover discussions the other day, but there is also this great gift of like, I get to have input and I get to say like, yes, I approve, or like, ooh, can we tweak this? Can we tweak that? But I also am very, very grateful to not be like, I don't actually want total control. I'm excited for other people who like that is their job to be like the artistic director of what this
Yes.
book looks like. It's such a gift to get to have somebody who that's their responsibility.
Well, I think we're almost at our time, but I did want to circle back one more time about you said earlier that you finished writing book two.
Yeah, yeah. I'm finishing the like kind of big picture
Mhm.
story and plot. Most, I mean, I kind of say story as in like the relationships, but
Mhm.
so relationship pieces, character arcs, and the overall plot, all of that editing will be done by beginning of March. And then we move into more of the technical editing. So it is coming along.
So when do you expect ballpark for it to be available? Next year? End
I
of this year?
I don't know if I am allowed to
Oh, okay.
say. I think it's fair to say like it's not going to be that long.
Oh, I'm excited.
Like
It's great.
and granted like publishing is a there's a not that long is like within a year or so.
Right, that's true. And do you have a title yet? And you may not be
We
able to say, but you,
we do have a title, but it is not announced. I actually just sent an email this morning that was like, let's look at our timeline of when we're rolling those things out.
I'm
So
excited. I'm
hopefully I'll be
excited.
able to tell you some things sooner than later.
Yes. So, absolutely, everyone needs to follow you on Instagram, or where should they follow you if they want to keep up with you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, Paula Lafferty underscore writes. I'm on TikTok just as Paula Lafferty. I've not been as active lately because I've been like hardcore editing the book, but I promise I'll be back soon. And then I do have a newsletter, and you can find that at my website, which is just paulalafferty.com.
Excellent. Yes. And will we see any animal sidekicks in the next book?
Um, not there is an animal. That's all I'll say.
Oh, okay, okay. Just,
An
I just,
animal,
it's what?
an animal shows up at
Oh.
some point. That's all I'll
Well,
say about
because your dog joined us before we
it. Yeah.
started recording, and that made me think. I'm like, I wonder if they need, like, if Vera's gonna have like a little pet or
Yeah,
something.
Not a sidekick per se, but there's a nice animal moment.
Oh, we love animal moments. So,
Yeah.
well, Paula, thank you so much for joining me today and answering my questions and letting me fangirl a little bit.
Oh my gosh, you're so sweet.
And I can't wait. I can't wait for the next book. I'm following closely.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to share it, and I'm just so honored. Thank you for wanting to chat, and thank you for having my book behind you and having your book club read it. This is very cool. I really
Yes.
appreciate it.
That's a wrap. Thank you so much to Paula Lafferty for joining us to talk about her amazing book, The Once and Future Queen. And friends, if you have not picked this up yet, you can pick it up at just about any bookstore. It's also on Amazon. And I believe you can also find it on Paula's personal site. So I'm going to have all the links below so that you can just click wherever you want to buy and order this book. It truly is gorgeous. And before you go, if you enjoyed this interview, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, in the comments, let me know if you've read this book, if you intend to pick it up. Um, and also, what question would you have for Paula about book two if you could ask her anything? So, thank you so much. All my full written reviews are on my jennasjustreading.com website, and you can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at We Are Reading. So, until next time, come back for more deep dives, author interviews, and just fun bookish chaos. And until then, happy reading.